Hi, in today's video we're going to take a look at installing crawl4ai, an open source LLM web-friendly crawler and scraper that will scrape websites as markdown files so that you can use them with your LLM, whether it's Gemini, notebooklm or anything else. So what I'm going to do is show you how to get this set up with Podman and also create n8n workflows to use crawl4ai to extract data from CSV files with a title and URL. So it'll go through the CSV file and try and grab all the text from the URLs in the CSV file, and also using searxng so that you can actually enter a prompt in the n8n workflow that will connect to searxng, get the web results, and then scrape the pages. So this is the GitHub page for crawl4ai, and this is the documentation. So what I'm going to do is actually take you through and get this set up with Podman. So obviously you're going to need Podman set up first of all, which can be done with sudo apt install podman and podman compose. You can also use Podman desktop on the Mac or Windows, and this setup will work with Podman desktop as well. So what we're going to do is come across to the steps that we're going to go through to get this set up using Podman. So first of all, the port that the Podman container is going to use is 11235. So you want to make sure that that's open in your firewall, and you can do that on Linux using GUFW, which is a graphical front end to the UFW firewall, and just create a new rule and add a TCP port 11235, and that's the first step done. The next thing that we're actually going to do is create the directory structure where we're going to have Podman installed and crawl4ai. So what I do is create a Podman directory in my home folder, and in that directory we're going to create crawl4ai-podman. And the reason why we're calling it crawl4ai-podman is because in the next step we're going to clone the crawl4ai Git repository, which is actually called crawl4ai. So this helps you distinguish between the folder and the Git repository. So what you'll see here is I have the actual structure laid out already. So we've got my home username, Podman, crawl4ai-podman directory. And what we're going to do is actually change into that directory. So we'd run cd podman crawl4ai. So first of all, you want to create it. Podman crawl4ai. So mkdir-p. Let me see, let me see if I can remember how you. I can't remember how you increase the. Oh, there we go. That's better. So mkdir-p podman crawl4ai. So the -p option specifies to create the directory path if it doesn't exist already. So that's the first step. We'll then change into that directory. And what we're going to do is clone the crawl4ai Git repository. And we do that by running git clone and the repository link here. And if you search on YouTube for Uncle Code, you will see the guy who's actually written crawl4ai has actually done some tutorials on how to use it. So git clone and then the path to the repository. And as you can see here, I've already cloned the repository. Now the next step is what we're actually going to do is copy the Docker Compose from inside the crawl4ai Git repository up one level into this directory, as well as the env file that we're going to use for the settings. And the reason we're going to do that is because otherwise what happens is a lot of Podman projects will actually tell you to clone a Git repository and then edit some key configuration files in that Git repository. But the issue is if you do that, you won't then be able to run a Git pull again because you'll have changed the contents of the Git repository. Doing it this way allows us to keep the Git repository clean and actually configure all the settings needed outside of the Git repo. So what we're going to do is copy the Docker Compose file from inside this Git repository up one level here. So let me just go to the notes here. So we're in this directory here. So what we're going to do is run cp crawl4ai docker compose.yaml dot. So what that's going to do is that's going to copy this, where is it, Docker Compose file here, up one level into this directory. And the reason why we want to do that is because we're going to make a couple of changes to this Docker Compose file. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we need to set the context path. So because we've copied the Docker Compose file up one level, we actually need to change a couple of items. So let me just come back into this. Hang on. So context. Okay, you see down at the bottom here, context. By default, it is just dot. You can see here, this is the before. And what we're going to do is change it to ./crawl4ai. And so that corresponds to the path to the Git repository. So that's the first change that we want to make, is change the context from dot to ./crawl4ai. So as I can show you here, what that means is the Docker Compose file is now going to look for stuff in this crawl4ai directory. Otherwise, if we just had dot, it would be looking in this directory here. Okay, this step isn't actually technically needed, but what I did was set up a output data directory for files. But since we're going to be using n8n, this isn't strictly necessary, but so you can omit this step. But I just set it up just in case it was needed in the future. So what we have here is, let me come back to the, okay, so the volumes here. So what we're going to be doing is actually creating a output data directory in the crawl4ai podman directory that's mapped to app output in the container, so that we can actually get stuff out of crawl4ai if needed in the future. So that's the second change. And don't worry, I'll actually give you this Docker Compose file with all the changes all ready to go, so you can actually just copy it into place. But I want to make sure and go through all the steps that I've changed and explain why the changes have been made. So the next thing that we're going to need to do is actually change the image. So let me just say, where's the image? Okay. So by default, the image looks like this image, Uncle Code, crawl4ai, tag latest. And I was actually having issues using that with the env file, and what I did was just basically hard code in the latest version of the image. So you'll always have the latest version. So that's 3 changes we've actually made in the Docker Compose file. Okay. So the next step is actually creating the environmental setup. So in the crawl4ai Git repository, there is a deploy docker.llm.env.example file. And what we need to do is copy that to the current directory and name it .llm.env. So I'll show you the actual file. So crawl4ai, deploy, Docker, and it's actually a hidden file. So you can see here, .llm.env example. And in this file, what we have is sections where we can put in API keys for different models. So OpenAI API key, DeepSeek, Grok, Mistral, Gemini. And what we can also do is actually specify the LLM provider down here. So what we do is we're in this directory here, we run this command, cp crawl4ai deploy docker.llm.env.example to .llm.env. And what that will do is if I use the ls command with the -a option, is that will copy that file into the current directory so that we can edit it. And as I said, you want to do this so that the Git repository remains clean, so that you can do a git pull and get the latest version. Whereas if you were to edit files within the Git repository, you would actually get errors. So let's have a look at the changes that we're going to make here. So what we've got here is this is the default setup. So these are the default options here. And obviously what you just need to do is actually put in your API key. So what we got here is the setup for Google Gemini. So what I've done is just comment all the other providers out because I'm not going to be using them. And what you need to do is put in your Gemini API key, which you can get by going to AI Studio, Google AI Studio. And there's a section in there that allows you to create an API key. And you just basically go to the section, click create API key and copy it to the clipboard. And then what we're doing down here is putting the LLM provider, which is Google Gemini 2.5 Flash. You can ignore this bit down here. What I was trying to do was put in the image and the tag in the environmental file, env file, and use it with the Docker Compose file, but that didn't actually work. So you can just ignore this little section here. I'll remove that after I've finished the video. So literally for Gemini, all you need to do is put in your token key here, put in the LLM provider as Google Gemini 2.5 Flash, and that's the free version. So this next step isn't strictly needed. What this script does here, set up crawl4ai, is, if I come back out, you see I have a output data directory that I created in the Docker Compose file. And as I said, this is just so that if in future it was needed, we could get output from crawl4ai in this directory. So what we have here is a setup crawl4ai script. And what this does is actually specifies the path to the directory, home, podman, crawl4ai, podman. And what it does is it creates this output data directory and it changes the permissions to 777. It uses podman unshare on the directory and podman unshare set facl, and changes the group permissions on the directory so that we actually have access to the files that would be created in there. Now, if you're using Podman desktop, you would actually get an error running this script where it say cannot use external tools. And that's because Podman desktop, at least on Mac and Windows, uses virtual machines. But it will work on Linux. So as I said, that step's not strictly necessary, but it's just something I set up in future in case it is needed in future. So basically all you would do is run the setup crawl4ai script, and it would actually create this directory here. And what you'll notice is the permissions are my username here, and actually you can see all the other files and directories are owned by users, whereas this is 1099. So what this does is actually changes the permissions so that it's owned by both my user and the Podman container, so that any files created in that directory can be accessed by your user and be edited by your user, which isn't the default. So that's basically the setup, and all we have to do after that is run podman compose up -d. Let me just switch across podman desktop. Okay, so if you're using podman desktop, what you need to do is run pretty much the same command, podman compose -- file, and that would be docker compose.yaml up -- detach. And once you've done that, the setup would actually show up in podman desktop so that you can actually start and stop the container using the GUI. But anyway, back to the command line. As I said, what we did is just run podman compose up, and that will set it up. So let's set up or start rather crawl4ai, searxng, and n8n. And I showed you how to set up searxng and n8n using podman in previous videos. So podman compose up -d, and we're going to come into n8n, start that up, and start up searxng. Okay, so we've now got everything set up. So what we're going to do is actually come across and did we close the browser? We'll open up n8n. Okay, so what we've got here is n8n, and I'll also open up searxng, crawl4ai, just show it's working. Okay, so let me just have some tea and take you through the workflows. So what we've got here is we've got the workflows here, and what you can actually do is come across and create folders to put all your workflows in to manage them, which makes it a bit more convenient. So what I've got is workflows that use crawl4ai on its own, and workflows that use crawl4ai with Gemini, like this over here. So what we've got here is actually, we've got 4 different workflows in n8n that use crawl4ai, 2 that use CSV files, and 2 that use searxng directly. So what we have here, first of all, is CSV crawl4ai markdown files. And what this workflow will do is it will scrape all the pages and save them as individual markdown files. And what the combined version will do is it will scrape all the URLs in the CSV file and save them to a single markdown file with each result under a heading 1 with the page title and URL. And this is actually more convenient because if you have lots of results, it's easier to go through a single file to weed them out. So what we'll do first of all is we'll go through the CSV ones, and then we'll go through the searxng file. So this is actually designed to work with searxng. So this is the CSV crawl4ai markdown files workflow. First of all, what we need to do is actually get a CSV file. And the CSV file basically just needs to have the title and the URL of the site that we're going to scrape. And what we can do is actually use searxng, which, as I showed you in a previous video, has the option to download the results on the page as a CSV file. So basically what we want to do is search for something and get the CSV files and then run through and actually try and scrape as many pages as possible. And the advantage of crawl4ai over just using a regular HTTP request node in an n8n is that it can extract stuff from sites that use JavaScript because it uses a headless browser. So what we'll do is search for something like, let's say Emacs, for example. So we've got Emacs, Wikipedia, some Reddit stuff. So what we'll just do is download the results here. Okay, you can see the results are downloaded. And I'll come into my downloads directory. And what you'll see is with searxng, helpfully, what it will do is it will actually create a CSV file that starts with searx and then the query that you've entered so that you can actually see what the CSV file relates to. So if we have a look at the content here, I'm using Emacs with the CSV mode, which makes it easier to go through CSV files. We'll see that we have a title, a URL, content, host, engine, score, and type. So if we come back across here, we've got the title, the URL, the content is the short little excerpt you get here. We got the engine, so that's the search engines that it's using. And it actually gives the results a score and the type is a result. So what you'll see here is, you can see basically it's giving you these different things, but all we need is actually the title and URL. So what I'm going to do now is come through the workflow. So what we've got here is a workflow that it uses the chat model here is the chat trigger. And you can use a form for this, but the issue with using a form that I found is it opens up a new tab with the form in it. So what I've done is actually set up the chat trigger to allow file uploads and just allow text CSV files. So what we can do is just click the little paperclip here and then select the CSV file. And we just need to type any message like start. So what it's going to do is, first of all, it's going to extract the content of the CSV file. And then what we've got here is the CSV headers. So what this does is, this is just going to extract the title and the URL from the CSV file because we don't need anything else. And then what we're going to do is check here if the result has got a URL in it, because if it doesn't, we don't want to process it. So just in case, there are some results that actually return stuff without a URL. So if the URL is empty, it goes to this no-op node here, and it just basically stops. So if it's true and we've got a URL, it goes into loop over items, and then it goes into crawl4ai. So what this node here is a HTTP request node. So let's have a look at the code that we've got in here. So first of all, the method is post, and then we've got the URL, which is host.docker.internal:11235 /MD. So what this does is this uses the markdown sort of processor in crawl4ai to convert the text from HTML into markdown. And what we need to do is add send body content type JSON, specify body JSON, and what we've got in here is the JSON request that we're sending to crawl4ai. So you'll see here URL, JSON.url, and what that is that's the URL that we have extracted from the CSV file. And what you'll see down here, I can't see, can I pop that out? Ah, yeah, that's better. So I can pop that out. So we've got the URL, caller config, content filter. So what this does is this is the pruning content filter. So what this should do is actually filter out some of the junk you get on the web page, like a lot of the headers, the navigation, extra content that's not related, extra stuff that's not related to the content. And you'll see we have markdown generator, default markdown generator here. So that's the crawl4ai setup. Yep, continue using error output. What we have here after the crawl4ai node is a if statement. So let me just go into the if statement. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to check if there is any markdown returned, because what you could actually have, what you can get is websites like Instagram or TripAdvisor or these kind of things that use bots and that kind of thing. What will happen is you may get an empty page, so it doesn't return any markdown. So what these are a set of conditions that have to be fulfilled for it to move on to the next node. So we first of all check if there is actually markdown. So markdown is not empty. Then we check is markdown does not contain, we cannot provide a description for this page. So sometimes you'll get pages that use lots of JavaScript or bots or that kind of thing, and it will provide a kind of default message like this. So we check for that. The other thing that we check for is sometimes you'll get markdown that just contains a single new line character and nothing else. So we check to make sure that the markdown doesn't just contain a single new line and actually has some content. And then after that, what we're going to do is check the markdown length is actually greater than 100 characters. Because as I said, we want to filter out stuff that, has got more than 100 characters, because, it may just be something like this site requires JavaScript or something like that. So we want to filter that out. And then finally, what we're going to do is actually check the markdown length is less than 20,000 characters, so that there are some pages you might get that have might be excessively long, and the reason for that is they may contain a lot of extra stuff that's not being filtered out, like just bump at the end of the text. So this will actually filter out markdown that's not empty, doesn't contain an error message, it's not just got a new line, it's greater than 100 characters and less than 20,000 characters. And what happens here is, if that's false, so if those conditions are false, what it does is it goes to a no-op node, which means no operation. Then this links back to the input of the loop. So it hits the if statement and then it goes through here and then it continues. Next, what we have is this code in Python. And what this does, this code, is it actually demotes the markdown headers. You get, let me just show you. So heading 1, heading 2, in a markdown document, you'll get headings specified like this, and they'll increase, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what we want to do is actually demote the markdown headings, so that if we have any markdown headings that start with a single hash like this, we want to demote them to markdown 2. And the reason for that is because we're going to add at the top of the file a heading 1 that contains the page title with the URL. And so what we want to do is demote all the headings so that they will be heading 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 underneath the main heading, so that we can collapse them. And that's going to be important for the next script that I actually show you, where it combines all the files into a single markdown file. So this demotes all the markdown headings if they start at 1 and increments them down to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We then have set output. What this does is this takes the title. You can see here the hash. So what we're doing is we're actually taking the title and the URL and then adding the demoted markdown after that. So we'll actually get a structure where we have I can't remember I can't remember if it's brackets. I think it's brackets. So I think it's title and then URL, and then what we would have is the actual content underneath that. So this is the structure we're actually going to be creating. Okay, so we do that, and then what we're going to do is actually sanitize the title file names. So this is some JavaScript that actually removes specific characters from the web page title, because what you can have is things like new line characters, forward slashes, and other characters that you wouldn't be allowed in a file name. So if you try and create a file name like my page title like that, you had something like this, what would happen is when you try and create the actual file as that, it wouldn't be able to create it because it's got a forward slash here, and it would actually try and create a directory. So that's why we strip out the those characters. Okay. Then what we have to do is convert to file. So we convert the actual JSON into a file, and we've got if markdown. Okay, so we check if there's actually markdown there. If not, it goes to a no op, and then it writes the file. What we've got here is mount data, sanitize tile file name, sanitize title MD. So what this does is this will create the output in this mount data directory in the container, but that's actually going to be stored in a data directory in n8n. So what I'm going to do is, after explaining it, I'll just click start, having uploaded the CSV file. And what it's going to do is go through each of these URLs and try and extract the text contents from that page and save it as a markdown file. It's also going to save the markdown file, as I said, with the page title name that has been sanitized to remove those characters. So it's pretty quick at going through stuff. And if I switch back across here, come to Podman n8n, you'll see we have this data directory. And this data directory is set up, as I showed you in a previous video, using this setup n8n script. So what that does is that creates the directory and sets the permissions on it so that files created in there are owned by our user so that we can actually edit them. So as you'll see here, it's going through and it's creating all these files from the CSV file, which contain the URLs. You can see it's chundering away here. So let's have a look at some of these pages. So what I wanted to show you is the structure of the markdown files that we're actually creating. So this is why the demote Python script was needed, so that what we have in each file is a heading 1 with the page title, followed by the URL, followed by the article underneath like this, so that we can actually collapse the whole thing. So I'm using Emacs with markdown mode here, which allows you to collapse the headings. And I did come across an issue with trying to find a markdown editor that would work on Mac OS X that had this functionality to collapse the headings. And the only one I actually came across was VS Code. So there are lots of markdown editors for the Mac, things like Ulysses, Bear, other ones like that, but none of them actually seem to have the functionality to collapse the headings. And this is going to be important in the latest script that I show you, that will combine all of the text files into a single markdown file. So you can see here, it's already gone through and it's actually finished. So you can see here 21. So what you can see is the result. So we actually had 28 items in that CSV file, and there were 7 that didn't meet the criteria in the if statement, which means that the text didn't have markdown, it was empty, it just had a new line character, it was too short. But we can see here the 21 files that have actually been created here. So you can see we have a nice markdown layout of everything here. There is actually an option, I think, to toggle the URLs. I think it's Control-C, Control-X-M, Control-C. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so Control-C, Control-X-M in markdown mode on Emacs will actually toggle the display of the URLs so that you actually just see the text. So it's a bit sort of cleaner, like controls, like that. So you can see we have some extra white space here, like that. But this is convenient because we've now got the title here. So this should be clickable. Yeah. So if I click that, it's actually going to open up this this page here. Emacs resource. So you can see that's extracted everything. No. Okay. So these are just some of the pages that it's extracted, and you can see it's sort of retained the formatting. But the issue with creating lots of files like this is you kind of got lots of stuff to work through. You have, it's a bit of a pain because you've got to go through multiple files. Now, the reason why having multiple files is actually an issue is because suppose you want to use this for research and use it with notebooklm. That has a 50 source limit for files that you can upload. So we've got over 20 files here. So suppose you were doing a lot of research and you were doing a lot of web searches and you wanted to put the contents of all these files into notebooklm. After 2 searches, you could run out of sources that you can add. So that's why what we're going to do now is actually save these into a single combined file. So what I'm just going to do is come back to the workflow. So what we have here is CSV, crawl4ai, markdown combined. Basically, this is the same kind of thing. So I won't go over the code to repeat myself, but what we do is we upload the CSV file. So we just type start, something like that. And what it's going to do is it's going to do the same sort of thing. It's going to loop over the items, check if those conditions are matched that I showed you, go to a no-op node, which links back to here. And then what it's going to do is it's actually going to accumulate all the data in this no-op node here. And that is connected back to the loop. And on the done branch of the loop, what we have is an if statement that checks if there is markdown in the response, and if there isn't, it goes to no-op. But if it does contain markdown, we convert to file and we write to file. And what we're doing here is we're actually taking the uploaded file name. So in this case, the file name is searxng.csv. And what this is going to do, if I start this, is it's going to go through, do exactly the same thing as the previous workflow. Let me just have some tea. But in this case, instead of creating multiple files, it's going to create a single markdown file that contains all of the scraped pages. And each one is going to be under a heading 1 with the page title and the URL. And what this allows you to do is actually, instead of having to go through 20 plus results and kind of weed them out, it's going to save all of them into a single file, so that you can actually just have a single file that you go through. You can weed out the results, edit the text and everything. And the advantage of this is that then you have 20, 25, 30 search results in a single markdown file that you can upload to notebooklm to use and actually query. And it's possible in notebooklm to actually specify the source. So if you have multiple files in notebooklm, you can actually say, use this source, use the Emacs source. And what you can also do is actually specify the header for it to get information from. So rather than actually querying the whole document with all the search results, you can actually get it to just query one search result by specifying the header. So what I'm going to do is leave this to chunder away. And you can see here it's actually processing all the files. We've got 16, 17 results here. And the other advantage of this is there's no LLM involved in this process. So there we go. That's finished now. So let's come across here. So as you can see, we have searx emacs.md, and that corresponds to the name of the CSV file we gave it. And that's important so that we can actually keep track of the how that corresponds to the CSV file. So we can easily see, okay, that's the CSV file that we got from searxng. So let's have a look at this now. So actually, it should have more results than this. So why has this not worked? So it's got, okay, it's got 7 items. So maybe this wasn't the best one here. But what it should do is actually demote everything under its own. It should have more stuff in than this, but being a demo, something's bound to go wrong. But what it should do is actually have all the pages under here. So maybe this wasn't the best search result I could have picked. So what I'll do is I'll show you a different search result in another one, but I just wanted to show you the structure it's actually going to create here. So I'm not sure why that's not worked. 21, 7 items. It should have 7 items in here, but there you go. But as I said, what I wanted to show you is that you've now got each thing under here, so you can actually easily go through and say, okay, okay, this result doesn't look great. So what we can do is just delete that line, to delete that whole search result from the file. Okay, so that one wasn't the sort of best result. So what we can do now is, if I come back to the workflows, what we got here is two other workflows that use searxng. So I said in the previous setup, what we had to do was go to searxng, enter a query, and download the CSV file. What these workflows do is they directly connect to searxng and allow you to put in the search result without having to download the CSV file. So let's search for something else. Let's search for Newcastle United. So instead of coming to searxng, searching for something, downloading the CSV file, what we can do is we'll come to the files one here. Okay, so this one, what it does is basically you just search for what you want to search for. What it does is it basically takes the URL, the search query, and it sends it to searxng. So what we can see here is method get. This is just an HTTP request node. And we've got host.docker internal 8080, search query, JSON chat input, and format equals JSON. So the JSON chat input is the output from the chat node. That's the search query. And basically what this is going to do is we then pass that to split out. And what we do is split out the results, get the URL title. So we get the URL and the title, and then we pass it into crawl4ai and do exactly the same thing. We demote the headers, sanitize the page title. So let's type Newcastle United. You can see there what it's doing is it's gone through searxng, it's got the results. It's now created the loop. It's passing each URL from those JSON returned results from searxng into crawl4ai. And what it's going to do is actually check using those if statements if the markdown is, not empty, more than 100 characters, less than 20,000 characters. Sanitize the page title. It's going to demote the headers, sanitize the page titles, convert to file, make sure that there's markdown before we write to files. And then it's going to write to files, and it's going to carry on throughout the loop and hopefully process as many pages as possible. So if we come back across here, you can see we've got some files created here. And as I said, you can see that everything is under a heading 1. And what you'll notice is some stuff does get through. You can see it here. We've got some extra stuff like advertisement, some extra bump, but you can actually just come through and sort of delete this as needed. Okay, so having a editor that can actually collapse the headings is really important, so that you can actually just go through and, go, okay, that's not needed. I can delete that. So you want to make sure the headings are collapsed, and then you can just delete the heading and everything underneath it. So you can see here, Okay, this is YouTube, so it's pulling stuff from YouTube, but you probably won't get anything from that. So you can see sign in, you're getting a load of. So you can see here, this one doesn't scrape YouTube. There may be some extra work you can do to get it to do that, but it's just easy to sort of kind of go through stuff and be able to collapse the headings like this, you know, to see what's actually in there, team news, say, and actually just be able to delete the headings with the content you don't want. Okay, so right, that seems to have finished there. So let's go back and see if we can get the combined one. Just delete all those. Okay, so what we're going to do is use the searxng crawl4ai markdown combined. And this is basically the same thing where the previous workflow actually wrote the files inside the loop. In this workflow, what we're doing is we're accumulating the data in a no-op node, passing that back to loop, and then on the done branch, it checks if there's markdown, converts the file, and then writes the file. So we can just type Newcastle United, press return. It's going to go after searxng. Okay. And so what I'll do is, once this is sort of finished, I'll actually show you how you can add this to notebooklm as well. Okay, you can see here, you can see 4 items. What I also have is workflows that use Gemini to actually clean up the pages. So I'll show you that briefly as well, where what it does is it uses the AI agent to, be it Gemini or another AI agent, to actually strip out a lot of the extra text that's not related to the actual content, whether that's stuff like this site requires JavaScript, you know, back to home, other text that you might get in there that you want to strip out. Now, you can use a local LLM, but the issue I found is I've tried with Llama 3.1 and Granite 4, but the issue is using a local LLM to actually analyze the text and remove the content takes quite a long time. It can take a couple of minutes for each page, and it can hang on pages. So it's not really usable, to be honest, unless you've got a powerful GPU. I've only got 4 gig of RAM, 4 gig of VRAM. So that one's finished there. Let's see how many results this has got here. Okay, that's a better result than the Emacs one. So what you'll see here is we've got all the results. Okay, 2,691 lines. So what we can actually do is actually just come through stuff like this, and we can just, you know, we can manually edit stuff. We'll go, okay, you know, we don't want this bit. You know, we can just collapse the headers and delete stuff. Oh, hang on. So we can easily have one document with all the search results. So you can actually go through, you can see like advertisement here. So the advantage of having a single document is it's a lot easier to actually go through all the search results in a single page rather than having, you know, 20 or 30 markdown files to actually go through and try and keep track of stuff. it gets a bit overwhelming, especially once you've done a couple of search results. Say you've done 4 or 5 search results, you're going to end up with 100 plus markdown files to go through. And the issue is then you would actually have to combine all those markdown files into a single file so that you could upload it to notebooklm anyway. So that's the gist there. So what we'll do now is just come back in here and go into the personal. So what we've got here is crawl4ai Gemini. So these are exactly the same workflows that I showed you, except that what they do is they use Gemini to clean up the search results a bit. So what I'll do is I'll do the markdown files one here. Did I just delete that? Yeah, I did. Okay, so this is the one where we upload a CSV file and create individual markdown files. And what you'll see here is we've got the AI agent in here. And what we've done is we've defined a prompt. And this is the user prompt, and then here's the system message. So I can expand this. So perform the following steps on the provided markdown content, which is the body of a web article. Extract the main body text starting from the article's main content. Exclude all navigation items, footers, sidebars, advertisements, image alt text, fig cap text, and any other irrelevant boilerplate or website shell elements. Preserve all the markdown formatting within the article's body, including all headings, lists, and links. Your final output must only be the clean text from step 1. Do not include any commentary or extra text outside of the article's body content. And this is the content that is actually going to process. Okay, and then what we have here is the system message. I don't think that's got a thing to pop it out. It shouldn't have your helpful assistant. Okay, I'll remove that. You're a text processing machine. You do not have a persona and not a conversational. Your task is to follow the user's instructions precisely without deviation, provide only the requested output. You must never provide commentary or extra information. And that's important so that it doesn't say, add its own commentary to this. So what we'll do is we'll just grab, let's grab that Newcastle one CSV file, because that was better than the markdown. That was better than the Emacs one. We'll just attach that CSV file. You can type anything here. And what you'll see is it's going to hit the AI agent, use Google Gemini. And what you want to do is actually can I open this while it's running? Okay, you can see here I've added a new option, sample temperature to 0. And what that does is that makes it more strictly follow the instructions that you've set. So you can see here, it's running for like 30 seconds or so. So it does take about a minute or so to go through sort of each page. Now, another issue is crawl4ai on its own does a pretty good job filtering out most of the content. But as you could see, there were some parts where it leaves stuff like advertisement, back to home, that kind of stuff. Now, the issue with using Gemini or any other LLM is tokens, the amount of tokens it's going to use to process this. So, for instance, while I was actually going through troubleshooting the workflow, I was running Gemini a lot and I ran out of tokens. And what that means is you've actually got to wait a day before you can actually use Gemini again. And that actually includes Gemini, not just the API, but Gemini, the actual website. So you can run into an issue where if you're hammering the workflow a lot and using a lot of search results, you can actually run out of tokens. So that's just something to be aware of. So you can see here we've got write to file two results here. So what this should do is actually just clean up some of the text. What you'll see, it was actually removed white space. Okay, see, this has just got a load of stuff in here. You can see. Okay, so you can see here, it's output a load of stuff. Oh. BBC Sport, okay. But this is why it's important to have a editor that can actually collapse the headings. And as I said, if you don't use Emacs with markdown mode, it looks like VS Code is a good alternative unless you know of another app that can collapse markdown headers. But that was the only one that I really came across that had that functionality of being able to collapse the headers entirely or collapse them just to show all of the headers inside. Okay, so I think you get the gist with that. So I'll stop that workflow. Okay. Data. Okay. So that's the workflows. Let me just, I'll have to double check because I haven't. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So what you'll see is if I just show you on the left here, one example, this is the markdown before it's been converted or stripped with the AI agent. And what you'll see here is it will say skip to content. So typically on a lot of websites, it'll have like a skip to content kind of that will show up in, on sites that can be used without JavaScript so that you can actually skip to the main content. And you'll see here on the right that it's actually removed that. So where's the latest news? Can I show it in JSON? Yeah, so let's have a look at the actual JSON to compare it. So what you'll see is here, it's like skip to content, sync to calendar, all this kind of stuff. Whereas this one's actually gone straight to the latest news. So I don't know if I can see where the latest news is in there, but it's stripped out a lot of the stuff so that we actually get just the text without the extra navigation and headers and extra bump that you might get in there, like advertisements, that sort of thing. So that's the CSV file with the markdown, creating the individual files. Then what we have is the combined one here. So this is the one where it will actually combine everything into a single file and use the AI agent to actually strip stuff out. So let's see if we can search for something else. So Google notebooklm, for example, to see what we get back here. Okay. So let's try that. Google notebooklm. You can just type anything there, doesn't matter. And what this is going to do is take the title and URL from that CSV file, scrape it with crawl4ai, then use the AI agent to clean up the text, accumulate data. Once it's accumulated all the data, it'll come out the done branch, it'll convert it to a file and write it to a file. Typically, it can take sort of less than depending on the amount of text in the page, I found with Gemini, it usually takes less than a minute to actually process a page. Whereas if you're using a local LLM and you don't have a lot of RAM, it takes about 5 times as long. So to be perfectly honest, it's not worth using with a local LLM because if it takes 5 minutes to process a page and you've got 25 pages in a search result, you can do the math. It's going to take too long to actually strip out, just those extra elements. And to be honest, things like LLM Studio, LLM Notebook should actually be able to ignore things like extra navigation elements and stuff like that. So although it's nice to use something like Gemini Chat or another LLM to clean up the text, it's not strictly necessary probably, and you could probably manually just go through and edit the files and clean them up, and it would actually be quicker than using a Llama with something like Llama or Granite 4 or Gemma, because I've sort of only got 4 gig of VRAM on this machine, and it just takes too long to actually clean up each page. And the other issue is the amount of tokens the local LLM can actually process. So in these workflows, I'm checking that the text doesn't exceed 20,000 characters. If you've only got 4 gig of VRAM, you're only going to be able to process 12,000 characters or less. So it would have to reject longer articles to actually be able to process them, because otherwise your token limit would exceed your VRAM, and the local LLM wouldn't actually be able to process all that data because you simply don't have enough VRAM on your machine to process stuff. So you can see here it's going through, and we got 12 results here. So this takes longer than just using crawl4ai on its own. So as you can see, you can see it's been running for about 3.5 minutes here. So it can take between 30 seconds and a minute or so to process each individual page and clean it up so that it kind of removes those extra elements like the advertisements, navigation, other stuff. What it can also do is actually remove sort of extraneous links at the end of the document that aren't related to the content. So it said we've got 15 results here. What I'll do is I'll leave this to chunder away and strip out all the extra stuff that we don't want. And then what I'll do is I'll upload that to notebooklm and show you how we can actually sort of query just an individual heading. So what we've got is 31 items. You can see down here, 31 items. And up in the loop, it's actually processed 19 so far. So using the AI agent is going to take longer to actually process the search results. As I said, depending on the page, could be 30 seconds to a minute for each page, or longer if it's a bigger text article. So this does mean that you can have to wait longer for the output. So there's two kind of issues with using the AI agent, an online AI agent. Firstly, you may run out of tokens if you're hammering it a lot. Secondly, if the agent goes down, you get outages. or if there's any bugs or anything. So it's good just to have the crawl4ai on its own without using the AI agent. But that is going to include some extra text that you kind of might not want. So you might have to kind of manually go through and, edit the files before you use them. Whereas using the AI agent will kind of remove stuff. So the AI agent shouldn't actually summarize the text or alter it in any way. It should return exactly what's on the web page. But if you want to be completely sure that nothing's being altered, you can just use crawl4ai on its own, so you know that there's no hallucinations or anything has been altered in the text. And that way you can be completely sure that the source material that you've got is exactly what it is on the web page. So we've got 28 items here, so there should be 3 left, I think. So 29, I'll have to check, 28's coming here. And when it's done, what it will do is it will create the searx Google notebook.md file. You can see it's just hanging there, 29, 30, 31, so it should be the last 1 or 2. Okay, and so these are all these things are running individual Podman containers. So, okay, so we've got the Google notebooklm. So what you can see here is Control-XM. If I hide all the headings, we've got all the page titles here. Oh, wrong one. So that I accidentally hit a key, and what it's done is hide the links. Oh, that's interesting. I think that was Control-C, Control-XL. Okay. Sometimes this happens. You accidentally hit a keyboard shortcut and find something new. So if I run Control-C, Control-XM, what it does is it hides all the markdown formatting. So it actually hides all the hashes, the headers. You can see here, these is kind of like, this is in italic and everything, yeah? And so it's hiding all the markdown elements, the asterisks, the hashes, so that it's not showing the URL or anything. So Control-C, Control-XM, right? This is sort of by default where it's showing the page title and the URL. But if I hit Control-C, Control-XL, what it does is it keeps the markdown formatting, but it hides the actual URLs. So these are still clickable, but this is much easier to read. So Control-C, XL. So having it, this format is a bit messy where it's actually showing you the URLs. And also having control like this isn't as good because you can't see all the sort of headings, I don't think. So, right, so if you're in markdown mode, what I'd recommend is when you've got the document open like this, is running Control-C, Control-XL, Control-C, Control-XL. And what that will do is that will hide all the links. But still show you, so you can see here, the little link symbol. So you know these are actually clickable links. So if I click any of these are going to open up. But you still actually have the headers, so you can actually see. So this is better. So you can see here, this one hasn't got the. Okay, right. There's the link there. So as I said, this is probably the best format to go through stuff. So we've got all the headings up here, like this, but we're not actually showing the link. So having it like this is a bit messy because, as you can see, everything's split on multiple lines. So you don't really have a clean outline of the document. So Control-C, Control-X, L, and that will hide all the URLs and give you a nice clean outline, just showing you the actual page title. So you can actually just come through here and you can see, I can just click on any of these and these are going to actually open up. So we can come into this one over here, expand it, and you can see we've got everything. So we can actually come through and just expand these like this. So that's probably the best sort of format. And I said, we've got, how many have we got results here? We've got 31 results here. So again, you can create individual markdown files, but the issue is, as I said, once you run a couple of searches, you're going to run into over 100 markdown files, and it's just too difficult to keep track of all those files. You've got to, if you want to go through and manually edit them, it means you've got to open 30 files. Yeah. So having this format allows you to easily go through. Again, we can see sign in. Okay, so we know this one here, sign in Google account, so that's no good. So we can just delete that. So we can see, okay, this got a lot of text that might be useful. We've got Wikipedia here. Okay, see. Yeah, so that's probably the best sort of format that we can actually use. So we, as I said, we can do the same thing. We got the workflows for the CSV files, and we've got the same ones as I showed you previously, using searxng directly just to enter a search term and either create individual files or a combined file. So I won't show you that again because I think you get the gist. So what I'll do now is open up Chromium and come across to notebooklm. And what we'll do is we'll create a new workbook. And what we'll do is take this Google notebooklm. Let's just move that to the desktop. So there's Ada. Okay, so upload sources, home, desktop. Okay. So we'll just call this notebooklm, notebook. Okay, okay, it automatically filled in the title for us there. So the advantage of having all of them in one file is we got 30 search results there. If we had created individual files, that would be 30 sources. And we have a 50 source limit. So that would mean you wouldn't be able to, you'd only be able to have one more set of search results probably in this notebook. So if we come into the notebook here, what you'll see is we got the little source guide here. We can do some, but it should, let me just come across the desktop. Okay, you can see here, Control-C, L. So it's taken them in the same order as the markdown file. So we can see Google notebooklm, understand anything, and that corresponds to this section here. So what we can actually do is, if we had other sources in here, suppose we had other sources, we could actually specify just to use this source. So rather than actually unticking all the sources you don't want, you can actually say, just use this source. So what we want to do is what we want to do is grab this. So what we're going to do is grab the H1 and H2 here. from this search result. And we're going to say, from this source, just give me the text from under the understanding anything header. So using the Google Notebook LM source and this section of the document, give me the text under this heading. So, okay. So it should. Okay, there we go. Why is it? Oh, you bastard. Let's see. Your research, your AI-powered research partner, person upload your sources, upload your PDFs, YouTube videos, audio files, Google Docs. You can see that corresponds exactly to what's under that heading. So what that means is, rather than saying, okay, just use this source, what you can actually do is say, just use this source and this section of the document. So let's find another bit here. This is anything in the Reddit thing? Probably not. Let's try and find another. Okay. So what we can do is same thing. I don't think there's actually, annoyingly, with notebooklm, there isn't a way to just press up on the keyboard to return the previous prompt and run it again, I don't think. Configure notebook. So the syntax that I found works, as I said, you've got multiple, suppose, for example, we had multiple sources here. You can type, use the source, and then say Google Notebook LM, and this section of the document, and give me the text underneath, something like that. This heading. Okay. This semester, students can use notebooklm to generate flashcard quizzes, professional reports, and more. Let's check that. Yeah, this semester, students can use and more. General summary, is it giving me the general summary? Yeah, so that should just give you the text under that heading. So you can probably narrow it down. So say, just give me the text under this specific heading. But this is a really good way to actually upload a load of search results to notebooklm. You can add individual web pages to notebooklm. The other thing that you can do, let's come across to Google Docs. So with Google Docs, all right, what you can do is you can upload a markdown file to Google Drive, and you can right click on it. You can do open in Docs. Okay, so Control-H-Y should copy everything. And it's got this really annoying thing, right? So you click it, you right click, and you go paste, yeah? And it asks you to install a flipping extension to do that. So don't right click and click paste, just press Control-V, and it should, there we go. It's pasted everything in. So that's pasted. No, let me just check, that should be pasted as markdown. Can I undo that? Is it just frozen? Right, okay. So I thought there was a paste from markdown. Oh no, it doesn't allow you to do it. So Control Shift V. I thought there was a way you can actually get it to. Okay, that's right. That's what you want to do. So I'll try and explain the difference. So when you copy something from the clipboard and you use Control V to paste it in, it just pastes it in as raw text. If you do Control Shift V, it will paste it in as markdown. And the difference is you will get all the headings here. Okay. So all these headings, so you can see all the headings here actually correspond to these headings here in the document. So that's important so that you now got an easy way in. So let's change the title. Okay. So what that means is you can actually use Google Docs to actually paste everything in. So Control Shift V, and that will paste the text that you've copied in as markdown and give you the document tabs here so that you can easily jump to each article. So you can see the text you can see how the text is indented here. So that's the top level, that's the URL. What you have to do is you have to click on there and copy the link there and then paste it in. So that gives you the link there. So you can see the ones that are outdented are the page titles. And so the advantage of doing this is, you can put in the you can upload the markdown file directly. Yeah. But the issue is you can't edit this. Okay. You can't, if someone, you did this and someone said, oh, actually, we want to remove this bit of text. You can't actually do that. Whereas if you're using a Google Doc, what you can actually do is add the Google Doc to notebooklm and then edit the Google Doc and sync it. So let's come back out. Let's delete this. So we'll delete that. We'll create a new notebook. And can I share this now? So what you need to do is share, copy anyone with link, I think. So copy link. And we'll come up in here, link. So we can do, how do we do you just paste it in the doc there. I swear there's a way you can actually, okay, let's come out and try add here. Because it's the same one. I swear there's a way you can add Google Docs. Let's have a quick search. Let's use Gemini. How do I add a Google Doc link to Google notebooklm? I swear there's a way to do supported types Google Docs. Okay, does this, that's done. So maybe you need to actually go to Google Drive. Oh, okay, there we go. So today, most recent, insert. Okay, so that's not intuitive. So you need to go to Google Drive. Okay, and that should, okay, now it's changed the thing. Okay, so now we have exactly the same thing, but from Google Docs, which means we can actually edit this. So learn more about, so let's, some new text. That should automatically save, so you can see save to drive. And I think we can come back to sources. And I think there's, if we click here, I thought there was a way you could actually refresh. I thought there was a way you can actually refresh this. So we changed about notebooklm, some new text. I swear there's a refresh button or something somewhere. I could have sworn there was a way you could actually refresh the sources. Let's try Gemini again. How do I refresh a source with a Google Doc? Okay. Yeah, okay, I missed that there. Click sync to sync with Google Drive. Okay, so some new text. You see that there? Some new text. So that corresponds to that. So let's do that again, just so you get the gist. More insightful info. And you'll see that's now saving up there. You just come back here. You can see sync successful. I think you probably have to go back out, come back in. And it's not letting me do it again, but you saw it worked the first time. There should be a way to do it again. But I think you get the gist, some new text. That is saved. Oh, there, okay. So it eventually came out. So go in, out a couple of times, and then we can click to sync with Google Drive. Okay. And yeah, you can see more insightful info, some new text, more insightful info. So you can directly upload the markdown file, but the issue is once you've done that, you can't edit it. So the advantage of actually using the Google Doc is you can actually go through and, suppose you missed something. Oh, bugger, there's some text I didn't want to have in the source. Using Google Docs means that you can actually edit the source, all the results and everything, and actually go through and sort of read it. The other advantage is, suppose you're working with people who don't like Markdown or haven't got a text editor that can collapse the headings and all that kind of stuff. You can actually create a Google Doc like this and share it with them so you can collaborate with people, and they've got an easy to use doc here with all the headings, so they can go through all the headings like this. You get the nice little screenshot there. So it's a lot easier for some people to use something like this as opposed to a text editor like Emacs or VS Code, that sort of thing. And so just remember, the two ways you can get Markdown into Google Docs are, one, you can upload the Markdown file into your Google Drive, right-click on it and do Open with Docs. The second way is by pasting in the Markdown into a Google Doc. And to do that, you have to press Control, Shift, and V, or Command on the Mac to actually paste it in as Markdown, to avoid it pasting it in as sort of plain text, which would show all the hashes and the dots and all the Markdown formatting. Will actually give you a document structure in the sidebar so that you can see all the different sections that correspond to the sort of headings. So the advantage of this is because the Markdown has got all the when we get the HTML, it converts all the HTML headings to Markdown headings. And what that means is we now have a nice outline of the document, so we can easily go through like this and actually jump to any section. So that's kind of a big advantage. And having it like this means that you can, go through and easily edit stuff after the fact. After you've cleaned stuff up, you can still go through this section and, type in your own notes that, you might find other stuff that's relevant you want to put in the source or remove stuff. And so when you come back into notebooklm, remember what you have to do is you go to add source. So when you first create the notebook, you'll get this screen. So what you need to do, as I said, is go to Google Drive, select the Google Doc. So you don't actually need to share it. I don't think you need to share it. Maybe you do. You have to check. You should just be able to select the Google Doc. It will then show up here like this with everything. You can collapse that. So the other issue is in notebooklm, you don't have like an outline. So it's very difficult to actually, this is nicely formatted. This is well formatted here, but you can see this is kind of just like a big chunk of text. So it's not very easy to actually kind of read what's in your sources. So having it in a Google Doc, which has got a nice outline like this, makes it a lot easier to kind of go through. So you can say, okay, so you suppose you want to query this bit. What you can do is just like copy that text. So let's copy let's copy this bit of text here, see if this works. So what we want to do is just say, give me the text after this heading. So let's collapse that. So using the Google Notebook LM source, give me only the text under this heading, and stop at the next heading, something like that. And so what that should do is just return the text under that particular heading, hopefully. Sure, I showed you it kind of worked before, so now it's going to throw a tizzy. Okay, no. So there should be a way to actually get it to stop at the sort of next heading. Your AI research and thinking partner should come up here. Your AI research and thinking partner. And then you can click on these sections to actually jump to it. It has actually pulled out, I think, stuff from below there. So I haven't quite got the prompt right to get it to sort of stop at the next text, so it just pulls out this section. So it's pulling it out everything under this heading. But what that basically means is you can actually specify just a particular heading in the document you want to query rather than the entire document. So I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to show you how you can get crawl4ai installed, get it working with n8n and searxng using either a CSV file or by directly searching with Gemini and with searxng in n8n, and either getting all the results as individual text files or as a combined text file, and then using that and then additionally cleaning that up with an AI agent like Gemini or another one that you use, and taking that markdown file and either uploading the markdown file directly into notebooklm. But as I say, I think a better option is to actually put the markdown file into a Google Doc, and then that way you've got it online. So it's very easy to, when you're doing your spring cleaning, you accidentally delete a load of stuff you need in the future. I think, oh bugger, I haven't got those sources that are created for notebooklm anymore. By having it in Google Docs, you can make sure that you've got it online and it's backed up, and you have the additional benefit of actually being able to collaborate with people on the text file, so that they can sort of review it and go, okay, this information's not relevant in the source. And then you should, I don't know if there's a way, is there a way you can actually remove from outline? So I think that just removes it from the outline. It doesn't actually delete the heading and everything under it. So I think you'd probably have to kind of manually delete the heading. Or let's have a quick check. In Google Docs, can you delete an item from the outline and all text underneath it? See what it says. Yeah, so you can't actually delete looking at that response, you can't use the headings to actually go through and delete the heading and all the text underneath it, but you can do that in the markdown file beforehand. So you can kind of review the stuff in the markdown file and go through and just quickly have a quick shifty through and go, okay, yeah, this one doesn't look useful. DD, delete it. Okay, we don't want that. DD. So you can easily go through and actually sort of delete stuff from the markdown file beforehand, either using Emacs with markdown mode or something like VS Code. And again, just to refresh your memory on the keyboard shortcut. So by default, it's going to look like this, which isn't, as you can see, it's not great because it's some of the things that have got long titles are split across 2 lines, and you kind of got the extra text here. So if you want to remove all formatting, it's Control-C, Control-X-M. That gives you this format where it actually hides all of the markdown elements Okay. Control C, Control X, M. But the one I prefer is Control C, Control X, L. So that just hides the links, but actually gives you but retains the markdown formatting, the actual headings, which makes it easier to go through and collapse all of the different headings like this. So that's what I prefer. Control C, Control X, L will give you this format. Really nice, easy to work with. You can easily just go through. You can move these up and down. Just need to have a look at the markdown mode. Command keyboard shortcuts. But this is probably the way I'd recommend doing it, rather than having individual markdown files, which are going to be more difficult to manage and go through. So you've got all your search results in one markdown file, all outlined under heading ones. And as I said, you can come through, you just click these and these are going to open in the web page. So you can easily, you can see this one needs JavaScript. So you can easily just go through, check what's under the headings corresponds to the web page, delete stuff you don't need. So say we don't want this one here. So you can just easily go through, delete stuff, make sure everything's cleaned up. So you can either do it directly with crawl4ai, and that will have some extra stuff like, navigation elements, maybe some extra boilerplate text, or you can use Gemini or another AI agent to remove that extra stuff. So you've just got really clean text. Take this, upload it to Google Docs, and then just add it to your notebooklm, and then you can actually query just a particular section in that document by specifying, suppose you've got multiple sources, you can say just using this source and this heading, give me the summary of the text underneath that, and it will just use that section of the document. And you can then do all your stuff like these things, audio overview. So you can do your audio overview here. So you've got deep dive, brief, critique, debate. If you have a look on Reddit, there's actually quite a few good tips under the notebooklm subreddit, but Reddit's actually changed the layout recently, which isn't as nice. And they've got some good prompts here. You can actually apparently set it to do things like, by default, this uses 2 hosts. You can do things like specify the names of the hosts. You can actually say the other host is ill this week, so there's only one of you. You can do stuff like that. The audio and the video overview kind of generates it's not really a video, it's more like a narrated PowerPoint slide. You got the mind map, the reports, even though it doesn't have an edit button here, it will actually let you create your own. It's got briefing doc, study guide, blog post, marketing analysis, business. So it will come up with, depending on what you've uploaded, it will come up with suggested formats, and you can sort of edit these and then create your own prompts. These 3, mind map, flashcards, and quiz, only work within notebooklm. You can share a notebooklm with other people so that they can actually use it. But you've got to be logged into Google. So you can do things like a mind map. So let me just come across here. So we could do, can we do a mind map under this one? So if we did a mind map, it would kind of go through and create a mind map based on everything in there. So mind map, flashcards, quiz only work within notebooklm, whereas audio overview, video overview, reports can be saved to be outside. So if we just come across here, so you can see this is coming across, built with latest Gemini models, and that's going to sort of query those sources. The other advantage of just using URLs is you kind of got you've got all your text in the source, and as I said, if you're using Google Docs, it means you can just edit the doc, sync it up to change everything. So I think that's the best method. It's probably best to actually upload the markdown files to Google Drive. So you've actually got the markdown files uploaded there. Just create a research folder in your Google Drive, upload all the markdown files, and then click open with Google Docs. So that way you've got a backup of the markdown files on your Google Drive, and then you can just add a source, click Google Drive, and add the Google Doc, and off you go. So that's been quite a long one. So a lot to get through, getting everything set up. But I'll leave that there and put links to everything, and hope that helps you kind of do some research. Scrape stuff from websites, clean it up, and then use it in things like notebooklm or other tools to actually query it, and do an audio overview, reports, mind map, flashcards and quiz. Quite interesting, but as I said, they only work inside notebooklm. So that's all for now, and I'll leave it there.